Good evening. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for joining us tonight. Last week we started to look at the sixth miracle or the sixth sign in the Gospel of John, and it is the healing of the man born blind. I believe, beloved, that the signs, because John tells us that these are more than just miracles, that the 7 miracles in the Gospel of John give us a complete picture of Jesus' ministry, of his personhood, of his mission. I think we have seen and will continue to see a logical progression. The water and the wine represents conversion, healing of the nobleman's son, faith, which is how conversion is accomplished, healing of the invalid. It is God's desire that our conversion result in a walk. Feeding of the 5,000 physically, it takes calories to walk. Spiritually, it takes spiritual calories, the bread of life. Walking on the water, sometimes the walk is smooth, sometimes it's stormy. And we see God's provision in the storm, and then the healing of the man born blind. We need light, and that is what this passage is about, even as we have seen last week and will continue to see tonight. We noted just some things about this that, all of the signs are unique, but there are some specific things about this. It is the second longest account. I believe that is significant. It occurs on the Sabbath in Jerusalem, and so we already know what that's going to do. The religious leaders go ballistic. It occurs close to the end of the public ministry. It provides a platform for a very lengthy discourse. And whenever you read John 10 about the discourse of the Good Shepherd, keep in mind what has happened in John chapter 9. I think I was preparing this a couple of months ago at the Easter season, and as I just was reading chapter 10 for some Easter meditations, it just became so much more precious and so much more meaningful. And it becomes the platform for one of the I am statements, I am the light of the world, which is the only of the 7 I am statements to be repeated twice in the Gospel of John. And I'm not sure why that is, because they're all important. All right, it's a long narrative, so let's try to make a little bit of progress tonight. They are in Jerusalem, and they see this man which was blind from birth. Again, John he emphasizes that. We know from the synoptic Gospels, Jesus has healed 6 other blind people prior to this. The healing of the blind was a messianic sign. It was one of those things that was prophesied that when the Messiah would come, one of the ways to recognize him, he would have the ability to restore physical sight. The unique thing, though, about this situation, the previous 6 had sight at some point in life and then lost it for whatever reason. This man was born blind, a tragedy he has never seen. As we noted, in our culture, we haven't eliminated physical blindness, but wow, we've really reduced it. But even today, you go to a third world country, and you're going to see blind people frequently, and it'll get your attention, because it's not something that we see in our culture. The disciples speak first, and they ask the Lord a question. Lord, who sent? Very narrow-minded, very close theologically. They see this man as an object of theological curiosity. And again, the question that we ask, and I ask it to my heart first, where is the compassion? Why don't they hurt for this guy? And the thing is, beloved, the timing, having been with Jesus now for almost 3 full years, haven't they observed anything? On Sunday morning, we looked at the man with edema, And Jesus did something very unique. He hugged the man. What compassion! Didn't they learn anything from that? Didn't they watch their Savior? But yet, again, sometimes I have to ask myself that same question, where is my compassion? Jesus is quick to rebuke and correct. Neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. In other words, Jesus is saying, you're thinking in far too narrow a way, unlike the invalid who apparently his inability to walk was a result of some form of spiritual discipline. There has been no sin involved with this man or his parents. And that doesn't mean that he and his parents never sinned. Of course they have. But there is no direct correlation between the man's condition and anything that he or the previous generation have done. And again, in the minds of the disciples, the glory of God has never occurred in their mind either, apparently. Verse 4 is sort of a symbolic time clue. I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. And that appears to be a time clue, beloved, to indicate that the public ministry is ending. And I think we're dealing with a very compressed time frame right now. I think the healing of the man born blind and the raising of Lazarus took place within a very condensed time scale. And then the raising of Lazarus leads us right into the Passover or the Passion Week. We could be a month away from the cross right now. And so it is really, really short. And then as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And that statement is also, I am statement, I think is also repeated in John 8:12. And then at this point, in verse 6, Jesus just acts when he had thus spoken. Now he does something, beloved, that is interesting at the least. And I checked out some pretty intelligent people on this. I am intelligent enough to do that. I couldn't find anyone who could give a definitive answer. This is one of these passages, this side of heaven, it would be dangerous to be dogmatic. And so I am plagiarizing speculation right now, just so you know. So if you aren't satisfied with anything that I say, it's not my fault. I just share with you what I read. How's that? He spits on the ground, our Savior, makes a ball of clay and applies it to the man's eyes. It's not logical, is it? That does not appear to be a way to make a blind man see. It appears to be a way to make a seeing man blind. It seems to be something you would do to a younger sibling to try to get him in trouble. Oh, let me fix you. Let me put some mud in your eyes. How's that? Yeah, and I can see by some of the devious smiles on your face right now that you either did that or one of your siblings did it to you. But it just seems like a dirty trick, doesn't it? It doesn't make sense unless you're the Savior. Now, here are some explanations that I found that maybe attempt to unlock this. Could it be following the creation pattern? That when God created Adam, he did so in a two-step process. He formed a body out of clay, as we know, minerals, and then breathed in, he energized the body and breathed in the breath of life. Could Jesus be doing a similar thing here? Another explanation, possible explanation I found was this. Could it be a sign of the incarnation? That just as Jesus was fully man and fully God, blended into one, if you will, so the clay and the spittle become fully one. And we don't know. And one or both of those explanations were the commentators that I checked out. that is what they were offering. Physically, beloved, I think we know that in the past, Jesus would heal by touch. Touch was often involved. Touch is involved here. Again, you'd have to ask this man because people are afraid of him. There's a stigma, just like the man who had edema. I mean, how long has it been since anybody has touched this guy? Could it be that the weight of the clay on his eyes gave him some hope that something could potentially happen? And we aren't sure about that, beloved. But as with the nobleman, one of the things this passage emphasizes is a progression of faith. And that believing is seeing. And we saw that with the healing of the nobleman's son, and we will see it with the healing of this man born blind. The command that Jesus gives, it too is not logical. And notice, beloved, there is nothing here about receiving your sight. Again, there's a faith progression. Go wash in the pool of Siloam. Now, geography is important here. This event occurs in the northern part of the city. The pool of Siloam is in the southern part of the city. It would have been a considerable walk. It would have required exertion. How hard would it be for a man who can't see? We don't know. There are a lot of head scratchers here. John, though, does give us a hint, which is by interpretation, sent. Now, we got to pay attention to this, beloved. John does not assume that we know Greek. He does not assume that we will check out the Greek. And so he tells us what the name of the pool means. Sent. That ought to get our attention. And here's why. Sent is a key theme in the Gospel of John. Let me show you this slide. 8 times in the Gospel, Jesus states that he has been sent from the Father. John 3:17, 3:34, 5:36, 7:29, 8:18, 8:42, in this passage in 9:4, and the last one is in John 20:21, which is John's version of the Great Commission, and Jesus uses the concept as the truth handoff, and we know what the verse is, and there's that grand old hymn, as the Father hath sent me, so send I you. And now, think about it, beloved. Jesus is sending a blind man to a pool so that he can receive his sight. And I think it's something about light. In order for light to be good or to be effective, it must be sent. But it's an act. It's an act of faith all the way around. And I just asked this question, how can washing in a public pool that this man has never seen restore sight that he has never possessed? And only God has the answer to that. And again, Jesus did not mention anything that if you do this, you'll be able to see. Now there is, beloved, an indication, because the man's not deaf, that as Jesus and the disciples are standing there talking, it's obvious if the man had been paying attention, he would have heard that conversation. And that appears to be everything he knows about Jesus at this point. We go back to the narrative in verse 7. Take me back to 7, Dennis, the previous one, please. Thank you, sir. And John just cuts to the chase. because he wants to focus in on the aftermath. He went his way, therefore, and washed, and came seeing. Faith is rewarded, and faith will always be rewarded, beloved, because it pleases God. We are going to see that on Sunday morning with Ezra, and he just takes a step of faith in his prayer. And they're a remnant, and there's a lot that are against them. But basically, he just throws himself on the mercy of God and says, God, you've just got to deal with the situation the way you see fit. And God honored that. But God will always honor faith, and he will always honor his word. Apparently, beloved, this man was well known. If for no other reason, probably because he was probably usually in the same spot. No doubt his only means of support would have been begging. And so people know him. And what we have now, after the miracle, is that there are two parallel themes that John will develop for us. The first theme is this: will the real, formerly blind man please stand up? It just seems to be this instance of mistaken identity. The second theme is the progression of faith of the formerly blind man. And there are four groups of people that are involved. The first are his neighbors, those who know him, in verse 8 and 9. Now, please note here for the neighbors, seeing is not believing. Because the neighbors, therefore, and they which before had seen him that was blind, said, is not this he that sat and begged? Is this really him? Some said, this is he. Others said, he is like him. Can I translate that for you? Some said, yeah, this is the guy. Others said, no, this is a stunt double. I mean, isn't it obvious? And again, the humor here, the blind men said, it's me. I mean, why would you lie about something like that? You wouldn't. And then there's confusion in the midst of the neighbors. And the interrogation continues. Therefore, said they unto him, how were your eyes opened? He answered and said, beloved, here's the first faith progression. A man that is called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and said unto me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash. And I went and washed, and I received my sight. And that's exactly what the Lord told him to do. The guy was obedient. Beloved, I think there that the key and the first step in the progression, he simply calls Jesus a man. Now, that's not sacrilegious, but it is possible because of this man and his restricted locomotion, and he's not able to move and things like that, that even at the end of the public ministry, he may have had minimal or no information about Jesus. Again, I do not have a slide for you. I'll let you flesh this out. 12 times in the Gospel of John, Jesus is called a man. And it is an emphasis, beloved, of, again, his fully being human. The Word became what? Flesh, and dwelt among us. And that will be one of the first errors that the first century church will have to deal with. It was called Gnosticism. The book of Colossians deals with it. Gnosticism states that the flesh was evil, and therefore Jesus couldn't have been fully human. He was a ghost or a spirit. Or again, it's weird. I mean, all apostasy is weird to some degree, and it is completely contradictory to what the New Testament teaches us. But he was fully God, but he also was fully man. The incarnation was real. It was not an illusion. The neighbors, beloved, are still curious, but they're still skeptical. Then they said unto him, where is he? He said, I don't know. And he didn't know. I mean, he's at the south end of the city right now. The last time that he encountered Jesus, Jesus was up in the north end of the city, so who knows where he went. Again, the guy's being completely honest. There's no benefit here to lying. It doesn't enhance or put a positive light on the story at all. Now, later on in the account, Jesus again will seek out this man, and they will have this beautiful conversation. The neighbors persist. And in verse 13, they brought him to the Pharisees. Uh-oh. Now, why did they do that? First, look at verse 14. And it was the Sabbath. Jesus has again broken their favorite rule when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. And so the second group of people that get involved in this are the religious leaders. Now, why did the neighbors take the blind man to the Pharisees? Again, we aren't told. It could have been out of genuine sincerity. It could have been to gain the favor of the Pharisees. We don't know. But it is not an accident that the Pharisees get involved here. And they will become a major part of the dialogue and the discussion as well. And that's where we'll pick it up next time. But again, it's a phenomenal dialogue. But again, beloved, I just would emphasize tonight, faith pleases God. It will always get the attention of God. It always will reap some sort of a reward. And so we need to walk by faith and not by sight. Let me share some requests.